Okay, this is number 28 from Are You Ready for Calculus? And we just had this function. I kind of graphed it separately on a separate sheet of paper, so kind of makes sense here. So this is what the function looked like. It was just a little graph, and you don't really have a formula for it, so you just have to kind of deal with the graph. And the first thing they gave you was they wanted you to sketch f of x plus 1. All right, f of x plus 1. Well, we know from our experience, we're just basically shifting. If we add 1, if it's f of x plus 1, we're just basically shifting it 1 to the left. So that's all you have to do is shift 1 to the left. And I just said see the answer because it was pretty much right like that. If we take this and we shift it over 1 to the left, instead of being here at the value of the function being 0 at 2, it's 0 at 1. And instead of being at 1 at 1, it's 1 at 0. So it's just shifted over to the left. And if you look at the answer, that's basically what they had. Here's the sketch of the answer, and it was the same thing. It was just shifted 1 to the left. So you just had to move everything over 1 to the left. Okay, so that was pretty easy. Number 28b, pardon me, f of negative x. So I want to graph f of negative x. And you could set up a table of values to kind of get an idea what this looks like. But basically, if we put a negative x there, we're just going to flip it around about the y-axis. And you can see here, if I take when x is negative 2, f of negative 2 is just f of 2. And then if I look at my original graph, f of 2 is 0. See? And when x is negative 1, f of 1 is 1 by my graph. And when x is 0, f of 0 is 0. Remember, negative 1, x is negative 1, so f of negative x would be f of negative 1, which would be f of 1, which is 1 by our graph. And again, f of 0, that's not going to change. And then when x is 1, I'm going to take f of negative 1, so I look over my graph. F of negative 1 is down here at about negative 1.8. And f of negative 2 is about negative 2. See, so everything's just flipped around, so you will just flip it around. So we would look over here, when it's minus 2, it would be, so if we look up here, when x is negative 2, it's going to be 0. When x is negative 1, it's going to be 1. And it's going to go back down to 0. And then it's going to be, when x is 1, it's going to be go down like this, negative 1.8, negative 2. So it's just kind of flipped about the y-axis. And that's the answer I had. I just had see the answer because it was pretty much there once you see the graph. So all they did was flip it about the y-axis. Okay? So you could have kind of noodled that out. That wasn't too bad. Okay, and then, but a little table of values there just kind of helps you kind of realize that. Or you get to know the reflection. Now the letter C was the absolute value of f of x. Now remember, f of x is the vertical position. So we're going to take the absolute value. Now remember, the absolute value of anything is equal to that value if it's greater than 0, and it's equal to its negative if it's less than 0. Well, basically all that means is that whenever this is above the graph, it's okay, I just leave it. But whenever it's above, whenever it's above the x-axis. So whenever it's above the x-axis, that means the value of my function is positive, I just leave it. But when it's below the x-axis, the value of the function, the vertical position, is negative. So then I have to negate it, so I just flip it around. So this is okay, but when I get here, I just flip this around so it looks like that. So, and make it positive. All right. So again, when x is below the y-axis, flip it. When x is above the y-axis, leave it. And that's basically all they did over here if you look at the answer. This was as the graph was, and then all we did was flip this above. So no problem there. And the last one, f of the absolute value of x. F of the absolute value of x. So that might be a little trickier. So what you might want to do is you might want to do yourself a table of values and see what goes on here. So when x is negative 2, if I take f of the absolute value of negative 2, I'm going to take the absolute value of negative 2 is 2. And the f of 2 by my graph was 0. Negative 1, that's going to be the absolute value of negative 1 is 1, so f of negative 1 is 1. 0 is the same, and then 1 and 2 stay the same. So basically I have the same thing here. And then I just kind of reverse these. In other words, kind of flips it around. So what happens is I notice that when it's -2, it's 0. When it's -1, it's 1. And then it goes back to 0, so it goes like this, kind of follows that pattern. Okay, so it looks like it's kind of rotated only the positive part. In essence, it looks like only the positive part is kind of rotated around or flipped around the x-axis. All right. But again, set up a little table of values so you kind of see what's going on. That might help you out there. Okay, I hope that kind of makes sense. Again, if you need a little bit more explanation on these, just email me and I'll try to do a little bit more if there's something you don't understand.